Well, hello and welcome, and thank you for joining with me in our morning devotionals, or as oftentimes I refer to them as daily devotionals. I think in part because we find that many people obviously access these short clips when it's convenient for them, which is one of the beauties we have of technology today. But today what I want to do is kind of respond to many people want a Zuma fix. And what is a Zuma fix? Well, Zuma is my little Maltese, Maltipoo. That means he's a half Maltese and half poodle, but I think he shows more poodle characteristics. But he's just a wonderful little dog, very intelligent, very entertaining, never has a bad disposition, loves people of every shape, kind, and that is probably why he likes me. But I've delayed showing him for a while because we took him to one of those big block store groomers, and he came back looking more like a monkey in those places where it's more about time and money than it is about the art of grooming a dog. He came back looking pretty bad. So anyway, we had to wait till his hair grew out, and we found a new groomer, so some very kind folks in our congregation. And so the new groomer, Tracy, loves dogs, does a great job, and she really likes Zuma. So anyway, Zuma, you want to say hi to everybody? Say hello. Yeah, I'll let you go and let you get back to your serious work of taking another 10-hour nap. Okay, out of here, bud. You have at it. Well, if you haven't been with us throughout, we don't just simply talk about my dog or my t-shirts. Actually, we look at a book of the Bible. We go verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and I present them in somewhat of a academic form, but mostly just to give you enough background on the text so that you can see how it readily applies to your life personally. I think personally this is one of the real problems that many Christians have, is being able to relate to the scriptures, because sometimes, as Peter says later on in the same book, that some of Paul's words are really hard to understand and difficult, the things that he says, and people can misconstrue them, twist them, take them out of context. And so really my desire is to make sure that we really talk about these things within their biblical context and how they apply to the lives that we're living every day in this present world. Well, we're in chapter 3, and we're in the last portions of chapter 3, really kind of last half, beginning in verse 15, where Paul begins by saying, "But in your hearts set Christ apart as Lord." Again, statements like this are things that we read, and we read through them very quickly. I mean, how many seconds did it take me to read that one sentence? But the point is, we don't oftentimes sit back and reflect upon, how does that become alive in my life? How do I make that applicable? How does it make it something that I actually do? What exactly does it mean to set Christ apart in my heart? Well, I think about something that we read in Acts chapter 11, verse 23, for example, where when Barnabas comes to Antioch and begins to, sent there by the apostles to see why all these Gentiles were coming to Christ. And he said, when he came and had seen the grace of God, that is the evidence that they were truly born again believers, even though they were Gentiles. It says he was glad, and he encouraged them all that with purpose of heart they should continue with the Lord. Now, the word that's translated purpose here literally means to do something with a truthfulness to our hearts, with a faithfulness, with a loyalty. It means to be resolute, even relentless and unremitting in our pursuit of God. It means essentially that we put Christ at the central focus of our day-to-day life, and that we strive to make that the case throughout every day, so that everything we do may not be Christian work, or in the sense appear to be Christ-centered, but we're to do all things unto Christ. We're to do everything that we do with a mindful that we're doing them for Jesus. Many times people marvel at the craftsmanship of the early Quakers and Puritans. I mean, they would build furniture that still is strong and sturdy to this day, and it has not an extravagant design, but a very handsome design to it. It's just very both functional and attractive. And that was in large part because they believed that every work was a work of God. So when they built something, they didn't build it just to produce something and get on to the next thing. They were thoughtful about, how does this really display the fact that I am a devoted follower of Jesus Christ? And I think that's really critical for you and I to begin to contemplate in terms of how we do what we do. That there are some things that are just the tasks of life that we have to push through. I mean, they're necessary things. You have to, for me, I have to cut the lawn, and I have to prune the trees, and I have to weed the garden, and all that kind of stuff, which are not things I particularly enjoy, but I do it because my wife requires it of me, and because my neighbors appreciate the fact that we keep our house in a reasonably attractive order. And so all of those things are really important to me. I even think in terms of my own house that one day somebody else will live in my home. I mean, I'm not looking forward to that, but I figure that's an eventuality I can't avoid. And my thought is always, anything that we do around our home, that we do it in a way that it would service not just us, but it would stand the test of time, and it would serve the needs of whoever takes the home after us. Now, our prayer is that they'll love it as much as we do, but there's no guarantee, is there? So there's something I think that gets lost in this modern culture where things are so disposable and replaceable, is that we tend to treat things as if they are disposable. They're not really important. And so there are some things I know, obviously. I mean, if I have a paper cup, I'm going to drink out of it and then toss it in the bin. That's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about things that are worth doing, as someone once said, as my dad used to say to me, if they're worth doing right. And so Barnabas said he encouraged them to be purposeful in their service towards God. And what that requires, really, I think, is expressed by the writer of Hebrews in Hebrews 12:1 and 2, where he said, "Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which does so easily beset us," King James here, "and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith." Here again, what the writer is telling us is the Christian life is not a sprint, it's a marathon. That I want to pace myself so that I can survive as long and as well as I possibly can. But at the same time, there's something about the steadfastness, the steadiness of foot after foot, step after step, that eventually you begin to cover a great deal of ground. It's like that old adage, how do you eat an elephant? And the answer is one bite at a time. In fact, I read about a gentleman whose, believe it or not, his life ambition was to eat a Greyhound bus, those great big transport buses. And he did. He ground it down, and then he put it into smoothies, and he drank the powder and the metal. I'm sure he probably had health side effects that we don't want to talk about. But the bottom line is the guy managed to have to do it. That was his claim to fame. Well, I hope you're aspiring to something a little higher and more meaningful than that. But at the same time, the writer of Corinthians says in 2 Corinthians 4:18, he said, "We fix our eyes on what is seen, not on what is seen, but is what is unseen. Since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Now, you're going to say, didn't you just say we should focus on doing a good job with what we're working on right now? And I do. But we do it not because we're looking only at the immediate consequences of what we're doing, but we're looking at the eternal consequences of what we do. Whatever we do, Paul said to the Corinthians, do to the glory of God. And so when I cut my lawn with the idea that I want to be a good caretaker of what God has entrusted to me, when I clean out my garage and organize it, usually because my wife makes me, but nonetheless, when I do those kind of things, at the end of the day, I can look at it and feel that it's something that's going to say that I care, not just about my house, but I care about my life in this world. That as you give attention to details of little things, it means that you begin to cover the details of bigger and more important things. Because as Solomon said, it's the little foxes that destroy the vineyard. And I found that one of the hardest things for me to develop in terms of a discipline was to make sure that I take care of the small details and not just simply gloss over things because they're uninteresting or boring to me. I've often said it, and I'll repeat it again, that I've found in my life the difference between work and play is that play is something that I enjoy doing, and when I stop enjoying doing it, I can stop. I can quit. It doesn't really matter. But work is something that I can't stop even when it stops being enjoyable, because I need to complete the task in order for it to be done. And so that's kind of the way it is, that if I cut half my yard and then leave the rest uncut, not only will I catch it from my wife, but the reality is it says something about me, that I'm a guy who doesn't stick with stuff. So particularly for you guys who start a project, get halfway through, and then put it down and start another project, well, I'm sorry to pick on you, but I think that you and certainly your family would be a lot happier if you just get that one project done and move on to the next thing. That's the way I've approached my whole Christian life, especially when it comes to the Word of God. I pick it up and I read and I mark where I read to, and then I pick it up there the next day so that I can work through the Bible. And I found that the Bible, which seemed to me this ominously huge book, was something that was very readable, that I could actually read from cover to cover 2 times a year without really a great deal of effort if I just simply committed myself to doing it every day. And what happens is the first time you read the Bible, you don't become a Bible scholar, but after 10 years of doing that, you begin to develop an expertise in the scriptures that is beneficial not only to you, but to those who are around you. Well, out of time. We'll pick it up tomorrow. God bless you. Go in His grace.